Hello and welcome to the Women's Health Summit, where you're gaining clarity so you can lead with confidence and finally turn your passion into profit. I'm Laura Sherrill, a high-performance women's health coach and the founder of Balance Bombshells, and today I'm here with Brigitte Warne, who is a Sydney-based entrepreneur, mama, model, and advocate for PCOS awareness and hormone health. With a double degree in public health and health promotion and commerce, 2 international businesses, founder of the online community PCOS to Wellness, and creator of the hormone balancing herbal teas Sisterhood and Mamahood, Brigitte is passionate about sharing her own journey to wellness and empowering other women suffering with PCOS, hormone imbalances, and infertility with natural and holistic approaches. Thank you so much for joining us today, Brigitte. I am so excited to dive into the world of PCOS and just debunking the confusion around it. How are you doing today?
Yeah, really good. I'm really excited to be on here actually and to have a chat with you. I knew we were having a little chat before we started recording, and I've already connected with you so much. So it's really exciting.
So first off, I always love asking this question, is how you got started in your business and why?
Well, basically, I started the PCOS to Wellness was started because I was diagnosed with PCOS and basically I had no idea what that meant, who to turn to, how to solve my problems. And I was just really feeling quite alone and isolated. And I was really starting, the anxiety and the mental health aspect of it was really starting to affect me. And at the time I was actually modeling full time, and I had to stop that because my acne was so bad and my hair loss was so bad. So I decided to create a anonymous Instagram account called PCOS to Wellness, and I had no photos of myself on there. I had nothing to my name on there because I was always really worried that a client would see it or somebody would work out that it was me. And so for a couple of weeks, I just sort of had that running, and I was sort of documenting my journey and things I was trying and different foods I was trying and lots of different natural approaches. And then one day I decided I was just going to chuck a photo of myself on there. And that's when I really saw this huge level of engagement, and so many people were basically just saying how much they could relate to me. And it was so nice to see someone else that was struggling with the things I was struggling with. And from there, this little community grew really, really quickly. And then that sort of just followed my journey of the things that really helped me and the things I was trying. And one of those ended up being herbs. Which was, I was working with a naturopath and a herbalist for a long time. And from there, I grew my herbal teas, which is something that I wanted and needed. And so I just sort of brought that to the community.
Yeah, I love that too, because I think there's a lot of women who are now understanding how much their own journey can be not only a learning experience for us, but meant to be shared to help someone else along the way. And I just love that you do that with PCOS, because I was reading your blog and I was like, she provides so much valuable information and content, because I think there's a lot of fluff online of I've seen it a lot, even in the women's health community, where they're eat healthy fats. And it's
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Tell me more. What else can I be doing? Get specific. Especially for you, I think you have a very targeted, specific niche that I think, when you do that with your work, you're then able to really attract those type of people versus if we taught women's health and we're trying to teach all women, it's not going to work.
I totally agree. I think that that's one of the biggest reasons that it was such a, I guess people were so interested in it, was because it was such a niche, and there really wasn't many people in the space that were talking about it. It wasn't like I was talking about women's health as an overall arching subject. It was this really specialized condition that I was dealing with. And I did it because I wanted to, connect with like-minded people, and I wanted to trial things that were going to work for me. And I really didn't want to just take what my doctor said, which was essentially that there was no cure, and that I wanted to go any further. It was to go back on, hormonal birth control or try synthetic hormones to try and kickstart my ovulation artificially. So it was this real thing. And I think the other thing that was really helpful for me as well is I did it for years before I even decided to have a product. So it was really a genuine thing that I wanted to do, was raise awareness, share information, share my journey, share my story, share what was working with me, and hope that it was going to help other people, because I just knew how hard it was going through it myself.
Right. And I think I'd love to know your thoughts on some of the misconceptions on PCOS, because I think you portray a very different side than I think what most people will think of as PCOS. So like I remember having hormonal issues and going into the doctor, and they immediately ruled me out for PCOS because I wasn't overweight. That was like one of the main things was weight. And so like I'd love to know some misconceptions that you know about PCOS.
Yeah, well, I think that's a huge one. And I genuinely believe that's why it took me so long to get my diagnosis of PCOS, because looking back, I was put on the birth control pill when I was 17 because I never got my period and I had acne. And at no point did anyone sort of look into that or check that. It was just like, oh, it's, puberty or whatever. But realistically, by 17, things should have been starting to even out a little bit by then. So went on the birth control pill for 10 years. Clear skin, picture perfect, no problem. Skipped every single period I was, period. They're not real periods, obviously.
Right.
Life was great. My modeling career was amazing because I had this great skin and great hair. And I'd always had, before puberty, I'd always had great skin and great hair. It was just basically this whole mix of hormones and then going on the pill for 10 years. And it wasn't until I got married and decided to come off the pill. And basically we were on our honeymoon. This is a couple of years ago now. And I said to my husband, I'm like, look, maybe we should come off the pill now. Like because in my back of my mind, I was like, oh, I never really had my period and my background wasn't health. So I kind of was like, oh, it could be an issue, might be, don't know, who knows. And so came off it, and then nothing happened, and then a few weeks later I just had this like surge of acne, and I had brain fog and anxiety, and my hair's falling out in clumps and all these different things. So I started going to the doctors, and all the doctors are saying to me are like, oh, here's some antibiotics for your skin. The hair loss we can't do anything about. Maybe go back on the pill. Maybe that's a great option for you. Have you if you want to start your period again, maybe try something like Clomid or whatever, all these synthetic hormones. And I was just kind of like, this is really weird. And no point did anyone say, hey, have you been tested for any condition at all? And not just PCOS, but anything. I hadn't done any blood tests, nothing. And I think the biggest reason was because I wasn't overweight and I didn't look like what they considered a person with PCOS to look like. And so that for so long wasn't until I begged and pleaded and cried to be tested that my results came back overwhelmingly with very, very high androgen testosterone levels. So between that and obviously the acne and the irregular periods and everything else that was going on, they were able to diagnose with PCOS. But the biggest thing was I went to 5 different doctors. No one tested me because I wasn't overweight. So I think that's a really big misconception. And I do think in this day and age now, we're seeing a lot more leaner women with PCOS for different reasons. And they're not always to do with, insulin issues or anything like that. A lot of it's adrenal. So
that was my issue. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that was a massive part of mine as well. And so when we're talking about adrenals, we're talking about cortisol, we're talking about stress levels, all that kind of stuff. So I think that doctors really need to start to see that there's this different type of woman coming through now with PCOS. And I do think PCOS is a very misleading name as well. So this is another misconception, is people just assume that you have to have cysts on your ovaries to have PCOS. Right. So if you look at the Rotterdam criteria, which is what doctors should be using to diagnose them with PCOS, you need to have 2 out of the 3 things. One of them is having high testosterone levels or high androgen levels. The second, and that can be physical with, in regards to acne or hair loss, that kind of thing, or on a blood test. The second one is irregular period, so an irregular or absent cycle. And then the third one is cysts on your ovaries. So you can have the first 2 without having the cysts on your ovaries to have PCOS. So that's confusing for a lot
of I've also heard they're thinking of changing the name because I have never been diagnosed with PCOS, but I did showcase symptoms for a while for adrenal PCOS. And so I always knew like my adrenals were just like super taxed, and like no matter what I did, I just couldn't seem to support it as well as I know. Like naturally, I like just couldn't always do it on its own. But from what the reading I was done was more women of a leaner body type would categorize as adrenal PCOS versus what I think the doctor typically sees as PCOS with a cyst on their ovaries. But then like there are just as many lean women with cysts on their ovaries and have PCOS. So I love the fact that you're able to talk about the misconceptions, what it can look like. Like, it's not just a weight issue
No.
categorized that way.
Yeah. And I think, unfortunately, and I don't blame doctors for this, because I don't think that they're educated to that point where they know every single disease condition ever so specifically. But I do think that because there's not a lot of awareness around it, because a lot of people don't talk about it, they're missing out on this huge chunk of women that are going undiagnosed because of it. And then there's this also issue. So it's one of the most underdiagnosed conditions there is because of that reason. But it's also one of the most overdiagnosed conditions because women with cysts on their ovaries are being diagnosed automatically as having polycystic ovarian syndrome. But they might just have cysts on their ovaries, and it's incredibly common for women to have cysts on their ovaries. So it's really tricky. So that's, I guess, another misconception is that, like, if you've got cysts on your ovaries, it automatically means that you have PCOS. So very confusing. But yeah, my kind of general rule of thumb is, and obviously I'm not a doctor, so I don't diagnose anyone or anything like that, but if you're sitting there thinking, I've got really irregular cycles, I'm showing symptoms of having high testosterone and or androgen levels in general, I've never had an ultrasound, so I've got no idea if I've got cysts on my ovaries. But if you've already ticked those first two boxes, it's worth going and having a chat to a doctor and maybe just explain to them that you already know about the condition, and that you're ticking these two boxes. Can I now go and get a blood test to confirm I've got raised androgen levels, or get an ultrasound to see if I have cysts on my ovaries, that kind of thing. So it is tricky. There is one other big misconception that I think is really the biggest one, is that it's not able to be treated naturally, and that you can't fall pregnant. And as my doctor sort of led me to believe, and like, I'm case in point that I've now got a 12-month-old son. I conceived him 100% naturally. I've obviously, my hair loss is completely grown back. My acne has cleared up. My anxiety is gone. So I just think, and it's not something I think you cure and it's gone. I think it's a constant management of it. I think you say, you learn to rebalance your hormones, and then you learn how to manage them on a day-to-day basis. And it just becomes part of your lifestyle, and it's so easy to do once you manage to get them back and being balanced. So yeah, they're the probably biggest misconceptions that I can think of, here, right now.
And I love how you said, like, it's an ongoing process, because I know there's a lot of women out there who, I actually won't take these women on as clients. They're the ones who think that it's just a quick fix. And I'm like, your hormones are a lifestyle. So like, how we treat our bodies, like from the food that we're eating, how we're exercising, our environment, our stress levels, like our mind, like everything goes together. So I know there's a lot of women like watching this. So it's definitely like, if you're ever working with other women, you have to make sure that they know it's an ongoing process. Like you're showing up to eat well anyway. You're showing up to exercise anyway. You're having supplements anyway. Why not make sure that they're just super targeted for what you're struggling with? So that's why I love, like, you made teas that were like super specific. Just like when women are trying to get pregnant, they start changing some of their habits to support fertility. Like, we're hyper focused on just certain like life events, but it's like we can certainly do that from an everyday standpoint. And like you said, it becomes part of your everyday lifestyle where you probably don't even think about it. You're like, this is just what I do.
Exactly. And I think that it's so important, and it's like, I cannot reiterate enough that there's no quick fix. Like it doesn't happen overnight. Like, if you really want to address the root causes of what's going on, for me, I had 10 years worth of being on the pill to then rectify, that was 10, that's a lot of sort of damage that's going on being on the pill for 10 years that I now have to go and really rebalance, but also address the issues that I was put on the pill previously as well. So, it didn't take a week, a day, a month. It took me years to get back to where I am now. And I will too, for the rest of probably my life, or at least until I hit menopause, have to manage my hormones. And it's so fine though, because I eat the way I want to eat now, because it's the way I love eating. And I have my herbal teas because it's so easy, and I have my supplements because I'm not taking 20 million supplements anymore. I take 2 because they're the ones that I need. So it is a lot. And stress, I think stress is like the biggest one. And having to learn how to manage that, and really, and I mean, I fell pregnant on holiday, so I think that's a really big indicator of how much stress does affect me. But I've now really learnt how to manage that and how to like not worry about things so much as well, which I think particularly in that lean type PCOS, we see a lot of these very similar personalities.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, so my issue was I had low progesterone. So I had like an imbalance between estrogen and progesterone. So I had PMDD, which is like the more severe version of PMS, where I had like the emotional reactivity. Like I would get very emotional. And like what happens is like my progesterone levels would drop too quickly before my period. And it would just, I mean, major migraines, couldn't control mood. And so it was like, okay, how do I just smooth this out? And like, you just learn how to do it. And now like I don't get PMS at all anymore. So like to go from PMDD to someone who doesn't have PMS is like, my doctor was like, what did you do? I was like, I was like, okay, I think too, and I love being able to talk to women like you where because you had so many like shut doors from like doctors of like, basically there's nothing you can do, like, sorry, it almost like fires you up and like motivates you and like lights that soul on fire to be like, I'm going to prove you wrong and I'm going to go figure it out.
It's so true. And I think there's two types of people, and it's so easy to fall in either category because I know how disheartening it can be at the same time. So it's so easy to go, okay, that's it. That's it. There's no cure. I just have to accept this. And, if I want to do IVF down the track, then so be it. Like that's so easy to go down that path. But then there's a whole bunch of people who go like me and obviously yourself as well, who go, no way, I'm not taking that for an answer. I remember being up at 2 a.m. in the morning for the first 3 weeks after my diagnosis, just researching every single thing I could, doing every single course I could get my hands on, just every single thing to find out more about PCOS. And then I remember going back in. So I remember my doctor giving me the prescriptions for antibiotics, for Clomid, and a topical acne treatment as well. And I walked out and I had the prescriptions in my hand and I was literally opposite the pharmacy. And I said, no, I'm not going in there. I'm just going to go home and I'm going to settle down. I'm going to learn about this.
Right.
And I went back in for like a checkup about 3 months after that initial consultation. And she said, oh my gosh, you look like, because physically my acne had gone. Like that was the first thing that happened. And I looked happier and I didn't have the anxiety. And so she's like, oh, that's so great. This, okay, so we'll give you another prescription for the antibiotics. And I said, I didn't take it. And I said, I'm actually here because I want you to retest my hormones to see where my levels are at now, knowing that my last test was so bad. And she was shocked, like beyond shocked that I'd done that. And she was almost, I think, annoyed that I'd done it without having taken the medication that she'd given me for it.
Right. But I think like that's what's happening right now in women's health is like women are wanting more of a natural approach and like we're not taking the prescription as the answer. Like we're really challenging what doctors are telling us or, we're finally seeing there's another way. And so it's just so nice, I think, to have women out there like talking to other women about it and being able to have products and services to walk them through what that looks like because it's not easy to always find the answers that you need. And then like sometimes anytime you learn something new, it can feel like over your head and it takes time to like wrap your brain around it and like understand how all the pieces come together. So like you said, like it didn't happen overnight. Like it took you years to figure out and you're testing different things and you took your community on your journey with you. So it's just really, I just think it's so beautiful that you're able to basically take what was really painful and turn it into something purposeful.
Yeah, no, I think, and I do think that the biggest factor of that was, and it sounds so silly, but starting that Instagram account for me not only made me meet, these incredible women going through the same thing, but it kept me accountable and it sort of made me go, all right, well, I've already sort of now said that I'm going on this journey and I want to try and do it natural. And I always knew that if I needed to, the other stuff was there. If I really had to go down that path, I could. But having these people sort of, supporting me and joining me on my journey and waiting to see what happened and what things worked really motivated me to stay on that path and to keep going. And then, I took people through watching my skin clear up, seeing my hair grow back, watching, like, I went from being a very anxious person, I like, to the point where I wouldn't go outside the house unless it was dark, even to walk my dog, because I didn't want people to see me. I was so ashamed of what I looked like. And then, you know, eventually falling pregnant was the most amazing thing. And I do think that, you know, it didn't happen overnight. Like I said, it did take months and months and months, and things happened slowly. So I saw small improvements. It wasn't like nothing happened, but, you know, it didn't happen overnight. But having that support and having the little community around me, which you don't get from a doctor, and I like that's also not their job to be your little support team. And if you've got a doctor who does that, keep them, because that's amazing. But I think, like, having people around me that were going through similar journey was great.
Yeah. And I think too, I always have to tell women, like, how our hormones work, where, like, men's hormones reset after 24 hours. So every single day their hormones reset. We have to go through an entire monthly cycle. But then depending on the woman and the length of her cycle, it's going to be different from each woman. So, like, my cycle is usually like 28, 29 days. Yours might be like 33. You know, it's fine, but it takes an entire month for it to reset. But the kicker is you only see a slight improvement. So, like, I always have to tell women, like, I'll only work with women in 3-month packages, because I'm like, I want 3 months to be able to understand your body and for you to see the changes that you want to see. I can't get you there in 1 month.
It's not possible. Like, it's actually not possible, because you can't have that amount of instrumental change happen. And the other thing I think is really important for people to understand as well is, like, particularly when it comes to things like fertility and regulating your cycle and things, it takes 100 days for that egg to, like, mature and travel down and be ready to be implanted if it does. But I think that people sort of go, okay, I've started making these changes. It's now been a week. It's now been 2 weeks. It's 3 weeks. I'm not seeing any change, or my cycle hasn't returned, or I haven't fallen pregnant or whatever. But I've got to explain to them, like, that egg is still maybe, you know, it's working on its quality. It still might not be there yet. And it might take 3 of those eggs to get to a really healthy, great egg by the time you've done all the work and the preparation that you're doing behind the scenes for it to then become fertilized. So, it is really, you're in it for the long haul. It's not it's not a quick fix.
And I think, like, for women to know, like, it's not meant to discourage us. Like, we are so powerful in the way that our bodies are designed, and it was designed to be able to reproduce. But how can we support all of this and, like, just understanding our bodies? And I don't know if this drives you crazy, but, like, when women, especially now how much I know about hormones and women's health, when women compare what they're doing to, like, what their friends are doing, maybe it's like with, so I have friends who can eat vegetarian and they can eat dairy or gluten, and, like, they're fine. I'm super sensitive to dairy, soy, and gluten. So I'm like, okay, it's just not my path, but I'm not going to, like, sit here and be upset about it. You know, I'm going to praise them for having cheese and still having clear skin, where, like, I'm going to break out within 24 hours.
I know, I'm exactly the same. And that's what I say as well, like, it's kind of like what you talked about before. I always refer to it as a puzzle. So you have, like, this puzzle, and just say, like, we know diet is one aspect. We know that supplements might be one aspect. Like lifestyle, environmental toxins, all those different things are puzzles, but every single one of those pieces is going to be slightly different for each person. So you can be completely following what one person's doing diet-wise, but if that's not the shape of your puzzle piece to get into that slot, then it'll never work. So it's about experimentation a little bit. It's about looking at different, like, for me, I love looking at evidence-based studies, because that's like, you know, that's a great point to start. If there's actual evidence-based that dairy is inflammatory and that we know that it has hormones already in it, which can disrupt other hormones, then that's a great place to start. Okay, I will eliminate that one and see if that helps. And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but you've got to give it time to see if it does. But I do think it's very easy to look at our friend who can eat all the best things in the world and drink all the wine and have all the coffee and never have a problem. But it, unfortunately, like, for people like myself who have PCOS, we're very sensitive to different things. We respond to inflammation incredibly quickly, so we can't afford to have lots of inflammatory foods coming into our body. And I like to eat predominantly plant-based. That's sort of like the diet I found works really well for me. But I don't preach that upon people, because that might not necessarily be what's the right diet for you. But I can say things like, if you can eat organic, that's going to be a great option, regardless of what you're eating, because you're already removing a lot of the endocrine disrupting chemicals that were on that food in the beginning. So it is tricky, but I do think, if you got to play around a little bit and try not to compare yourself to other people too much.
Right. It's like, keep your eyes on your own paper. And like, because I've worked with women who like, they'll find out that they have a gluten sensitivity, and then they feel bad when they go out to eat and they have to be the person at the table that's like changing up their order. And I'm like, come hang out with me then, because like, you come with me to a restaurant and like, I'm not the most fun person. I'm like, can you make sure this isn't on there, this like,
I know you felt like
yeah,
I agree. And that, that was a really big part of my journey as well. And I haven't really spoken much about that before, but I had to really change my lifestyle and the people that were in my lifestyle, because I was having times when I was like, oh, I can't hang out with that person because I know that they love to drink and they're going to look upon me weirdly if I don't want to drink or eat all the pizza and all that kind of stuff. And so I had to sort of not remove them from my life, but I guess distance myself from a little bit from in the beginning, particularly in that first few months where I did go quite hard, like in terms of really trying to cut out inflammatory things in my life. And that was, a lot of it was food and alcohol and things like that, which I thought I'd rather not be in a situation where I'm made to feel uncomfortable, which did, I guess, in some ways was great, in some ways was hard because you sort of lose a bit of your social aspect, but then connecting with people who are like-minded and understand was the best thing ever. And like, again, that took me back to the Instagram community, because although I didn't know a lot of them in person, they had my back and they were like, yeah, we get it. Like, you've got to do it. And eventually over time, I have reintroduced small amounts of alcohol. Like if I go to a wedding, I'll have a glass of champagne, or occasionally I'll have a slice of sourdough bread or whatever. And I'm fine now because my body can tolerate it now, but it couldn't when it was very inflammatory and I just come off the pill and had all these different things going on. So I totally agree though. Like, I think you've got to say, okay, are those people going to cause me more stress or discomfort, or like they're not going to understand what I'm going through? I need to find someone who is, or hang out with those people that are going to make me not feel weird about going through it. And the other thing that I'll say is like, what I found was really helpful was actually starting to explain to people why I was doing something, as opposed to being like, oh no, I don't want to eat that, or I can't eat that, or whatever. I'd just be like, oh, like I'm really struggling with my skin at the moment, and I know that these foods are like they flare my skin, or I've just got my cycle back and I'm really trying to keep my cycle. Like, it's so important to me. And then when you explain that to people don't question you. They go, oh, okay, obviously it's important to her. Like, let her go. Yeah.
I think too, like we almost just perceive that they're going to judge us, where I noticed a lot of the questions I got were more out of curiosity because it was different. And so then I was like, because when I first started dating my now husband, his family can eat gluten and dairy and be just fine. Yeah. Me, my brother, and sister are all gluten free. Like, we have like the allergy for it. And so they would just ask me all the time, like, just kind of like trying to understand it. And so I really think that sometimes people are really not coming from a place of judgment. They're coming from a place of, I don't understand this and I'm curious about it.
Oh, totally. Yeah, and I think we like automatically go into like, they're judging me, but they're actually like inquisitive. And particularly like for me, I found when I started to get results and people would see that I looked at my acne and all like, they're like, so what, tell me again, like what you
Then the conversation completely changes. And because that's why I ended up doing women's health, because I started just kind of like hacking my hormones a little bit. Like, okay, I'm understanding I need to change these foods. I'm testing out these supplements. And my friends would just ask me like, oh, like I'm noticing your energy is better. Like, you're not feeling as tired. Like, I was able to power through certain stressful situations that used to make me feel really stressed and overwhelmed. So it's interesting how it flips, but also your confidence increases because you're starting to see results.
Yeah. So true.
So when you work with women with PCOS, what do you find are like the biggest changes that they need to make to start?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest changes are looking at, first of all, your diet, because I think that the diet, like, that's what we're primarily putting into our body every single day. So we need to have a really good look at that. And the first thing, like, I'll say to people is, you don't have to like do extreme changes to your diet if you don't think you can at this point, but take out anything that you can take out. So if you know that you have 5 cups of coffee a day and you know that caffeine is inflammatory, then like maybe you can cut that down a little bit, or have 1 coffee a day as opposed to 5, or even better, cut it out and switch over to herbal tea or something like that. If you have a lot of processed foods, cut them out, stick to whole foods and really work on whole foods. If you have a lot of refined carbohydrates, switch over to complex carbohydrates and just making those little changes. And then I think over time, like we said, it just becomes part of your lifestyle and you don't even think about it. Like when you go to buy a grain, instead of buying like whole wheat pasta, you might buy quinoa or something like that, or something that's going to be easier for your body to digest. So that the diet is like the first place I think everyone should take a really hard look at and just go, okay. The second thing is just maybe seeing what you're deficient in, so that can do that on a blood test, or if you kind of already can pick up any of the symptoms of being deficient in things. Like a lot of women with PCOS are deficient in like things like zinc and magnesium. If you follow a plant-based diet, then you need to be supplementing with B12. People don't understand that. So I think just really having a look at those things. If you're trying to fall pregnant, like folate's a really great, you're not even trying to fall pregnant. It's just folate is another one that is quite often deficient in. And then people who have the mother dream, which can actually make you not able to process folate, then you've got to get the right form. So you've got to get the methylfolate. So there's just different things that you got to look at to get that. But again, that's a bit of trial and error, or getting the test done to see where you're at with that. So supplementation's a big one. Another really big one I'd say to look at straight away is like your environment. So what is causing you stress? Is there anything that you can go straight away, like financially, I'm really stressed at the moment, or I'm having relationship issues, or work's really stressing me out, or trying to fall pregnant is really stressing me out, because unfortunately, if there's stress there, if stress is at play and it is sort of chronically there, your hormones can't function. So it's kind of like, unless we can bring those stress levels down, our hormones are never going to be able to rise over the top of that, because it's such an overwhelming hormone, that cortisol hormone. So we've really got to work on that. And the other thing that I think we see huge, and I don't know if you see this a lot, you probably do in your field of work, but people sort of like over exercising, or that really,
that was my issue.
And I think that's such a big one, because again, it's physical stress that we're placing on our bodies, so which causes the inflammation, which causes the hormone,
and it just
a vicious cycle. So it's been really bad. Like I just see so many women over exercising, under eating. I think fats are so underrated. Like I myself, I don't know if it was just like where I grew up or whatever, but it was like when I was a teen, fat-free was like this big thing, like fat-free or 99% fat-free or low in fat was on every label ever. And I was like, okay, programmed in my mind, I obviously need to eat low fat. So, everything I looked at was fat. I never looked at the other components in the diet, in the nutritional,
like fiber. And,
I was like, fat, okay, 0 fat, great, I'll grab that one. So I kind of was brainwashed to think fat-free, and now and it was very hard to get my mind over this. And I think that it definitely triggered some eating issues. But now I'm like, fat is like the key to my diet. Having good fats every single day is like the best. And I have chocolate every single day. It's dark chocolate.
Yes.
And I love it. And I don't even crave, regular dairy milk anymore, because I just really love my dark chocolate. But avocados, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know, there's a lot of different things that you've got to look at. So there's that, obviously the stress, and then there's things like, what products are you using? Are you using products laden with endocrine disrupting chemicals? Because that's going to be causing you issues as well. So like I really did a revamp of my whole kitchen. I took everything out of plastic and put it into glass jars. I switched over all my makeup to all natural products, because like your skin is your largest organ. So whatever you're putting on there, even things like candles, making sure that the candle that you're using isn't full of synthetic perfumes and things like that. So I think just looking at those sort of things are great. And then when you can, if you can, seeking out a different practitioner, whether that's like a health coach or a naturopath or a nutritionist or whatever field you want to go down. For me, I really got into herbs, and herbs have been they were the little missing piece of the puzzle, because I was doing everything else. I'd worked it all out, and it was when I started to add those herbs in, not once, but now every single day, 2 to 3 times a day, I have a cup of herbal tea, which has all the detoxifying, hormone balancing herbs in it that I need. But it's just part of my lifestyle. It's not hard. I just make a pot and drink it.
But so I'm just sitting here like kind of geeking out too, because I know how overwhelming it is at first to like realize how many changes you need to make, like diet, fitness, products. But it happens slowly, especially as you're learning.
Yes.
But so my skin cleared up so much when I switched my products from like makeup, cleaning products, definitely switching to like glass versus plastic containers. And then I wish someone had talked to me about exercise, because I was definitely raised like, to be thin, you eat less, you exercise more. Like that was same. And so like, oh man, I over exercised so much thinking I was being healthy. And it took me years to realize how much of a disservice I was doing. And like, so it's just really interesting of how much your own journey comes out to support you in a positive way at some point. But like sometimes you have to go through those dark days to also be motivated to make that change. And realize what you need to change, because it's going to be different in every single woman. Especially when you were talking about like the low fat diets, which my mom used to do because that was like what was marketed towards them. So then that's coming into the house.
Yes.
And I think women get like a little freaked out over, oh, I need to eat more healthy fat, thinking it's like a ton. It's like, no, it's like a tablespoon or 2 at each meal. It's not like,
we're not like bleeding things in. It's like adding a little bit of fat with whatever else you're having, which also helps regulate your blood sugars. So like, it's a great thing to be adding in. And just, I think like, you know, for me, it's like half an avocado, like adding with that, it's so easy to add in. And I agree though. Like I think the first thing to do is to just take a step back and look at the big picture, and then look at what you can do over the next couple of weeks to sort of implement some things. And then once you've done those, look at the next things you can implement, because one, it's very time consuming and it's a bit expensive as well to
for sure.
Go from, so you gotta be there to do it. But like once you've made the changes, and it will happen over a year or whatever, you don't go back, and it's all obviously you're then in it for the long term, and so it's it's a lot easier to implement.
I feel like women will start like really feeling a change after like 8 weeks, 12 weeks, like things get better. But it also depends on like the severity of their issues. So like for me, I didn't have anyone walking me through it, and I had no idea what I was doing. So it took me like 18 months from start to finish. But that's because I didn't know, like you're just testing everything.
Same.
And now it's like, okay, now I can see that it might have taken me like 3 cycles now that you know what you're doing.
And to have that right person sort of guiding you. And again, not everyone's the same. So it's like, guiding someone is very different to telling them exactly what they should and shouldn't do. But I do think that if you have the guidance, at least you can sort of be on the right path to then do trial and error, rather than like trial and error everything and not really know what's working. But I don't know. For me, like things like I just basically I now only do sort of cortisol conscious working out, because one, I was never a real gym person anyway. So it wasn't like I ran every day or anything like that. Definitely didn't do that. But I sort of, I incorporate, because I still think it's really important to have elements of movement in your life every single day. So I walk so much. I walk every day, twice a day with my dogs and my son, and we do 2, really great walks a day. And then I'll do yoga, I'll do Pilates, stretching, swimming, surfing, all that kind of stuff for me is fantastic. Anything in nature is really great for me, because one, I'm getting the exercise, but 2, just being in nature really relaxes me and reduces my stress a lot. So, but that might not be the same for someone who really loves high intensity workouts and they've done them forever. They'll have to find like a happy medium, and maybe that's incorporating more rest days into their schedule, or not doing, an hour session. Maybe they'll do a 20-minute session or whatever it is. But you've got to work out what it is and what works for you.
Right. So that was me. I had to find the happy medium. But what I noticed is, and I always tell this to women, because I work with a lot of like athletes too, where when I stopped running so much, because I was like, I think my running's becoming like an issue. I think I should just stop and take a break, because I never took a break. In 3 weeks, I lost 10 pounds. And I'm like,
wow,
those stress hormones are no joke. So it wasn't like I was ever heavy, but my body was hanging on to so much cortisol that once I stopped, I lost all the cortisol and I just lost 10 pounds. And people were like, what did you do? And I was like, I literally stopped running. And
that
like,
is crazy.
it was crazy. So I was like, okay, that cortisol. So when women complain about like bloat in their midsection, I always know their cortisol levels are too high.
Yeah.
And then like you start breaking down like some of the questions, like what their lifestyle is, what their exercise is like, you know, how much coffee or alcohol are they drinking, like all the things. So it's just unbelievable on how much our hormones drive so much, but nobody really knows. And then what I love about you is that you focus on a very specific niche in women's health. So I think like people can then know, okay, I have PCOS. You're going to track those people who have PCOS versus like, I don't know as much about PCOS, you know, like that just hasn't been my path. But if someone came to me and they're like, I'm struggling with PCOS, I'm like, I know somebody who is going to be able to help you far better than what I can do. So it's really good to know your strength, like in your profession and work, but then also making sure you have resources to guide people to when you know you can't necessarily help them to the same level that they're looking for.
Totally. Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Because, everyone, I think as well, you're really invested in what you know. So, like, you obviously you're specializing in people who are sports people and athletes and things like that, and that's so crucial because that's such a niche in itself. And then it's I don't know anything about that. So if someone came to me and they were like, "Hey, like I'm a professional athlete," I'd be like, "I'm gonna pass you across the
right."
Yeah.
Because like I can know, so I'll know more of those symptoms where like I might miss some of the PCOS ones because I don't necessarily know unless they told me I went to the doctor and I had cysts on my ovaries.
Yeah.
Or hair loss. Like,
exactly.
I know some of them, but so I definitely focus on the woman who's more like estrogen dominant, low progesterone, because like that was my path. So I think it's like for the women listening too, of understanding there's going to be so many different elements of women's health that you can teach. And like, if you have had PCOS, like it can be a really great niche to be in because there's so many more women who are now understanding that they have it and they're understanding that there's different forms of it and it's not just so cut and dry.
Yeah, for sure. Well, they're saying now they think it's like 1 in 6 women have PCOS, which is like insane. I think that's just crazy. But you know what's really interesting? And my naturopath told me this early on. She was trying to, I guess, she was giving me some like positive insights into PCOS. And she said, women with PCOS are often one of the most driven people because of this adrenal, because we're so like this, we're very driven, where we're the overachievers, we get stuff done, like we just do things. That was one thing. But another thing, which I'm just thinking of it now as we're talking, was a lot of women with PCOS who have high testosterone levels are great athletes because of the testosterone levels.
They can build muscle well.
They can build muscle really, really well. And they have, they're so built for that sort of sport. I'm not, so I don't have great muscle. But yeah, it's really interesting because like she was sort of reeling off some of the great athletes who are women who have PCOS. And I was like, oh, that is so crazy. But they've learned to use it to their advantage as well, which is really cool.
Right. And I think it's just like what I view hormones as is like another level of mindfulness to understand yourself. So it becomes like an opportunity to figure out what you need. And I feel like it's such a freeing practice, like just like you practice yoga, like I feel like you practice your hormones because especially you being a mom, you know that there's going to be different stages based on what your hormones are going through. Not only like trying to get pregnant, but then when you are pregnant and then postpartum, like those are some big hormone shifts.
Totally.
So just knowing
like there's so many different things with breastfeeding as well. Like it's it's this roller coaster, but it's crazy.
But like I think women's health, like you have to be fluid with your body and learn how to like support it versus like try to control it, which I feel like driven women, we try to control, right? Like we want everything to be in this neat little box and then we get super angry when it's not. Like totally understand. Yeah. But our bodies aren't designed like that.
No, I totally agree. I think one of the best things I ever did was let go and like just go with the flow. And honestly, I was very like, I had to know everything. I had to know when things were happening. Everything had to be done, and I have to know what's coming up. And now I'm just sort of like, okay, like it's going to just flow and it's just going to happen. And then I'm going to cope with it when it happens, as opposed to preempting it for days and weeks and stressing about it. And then it may or may not even happen. So it's sort of like, you just go with it. And then when it comes, you work with it. And then, there's no fix. It's a constant management and program and practice, I think is the best word.
So I'd love to hear more of like your teas, and then I know you have like a freebie for everybody. So if you want to like just share a little bit of like how your teas came about, because I love that like not only do you have like a women's health business, but then you also have products to be able to help your community.
Yeah, well, basically, I think I mentioned a little bit about it before, but I created these herbal teas because I needed the herbal tea. So I was taking so many different herbs every day, and I had to weigh them out, and then and it was just costing me a fortune. And I was like, I literally looked like I had like a herbalist shop on my kitchen bench, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I sort of worked with a naturopath to get all the ratios really correct, and then ended up finding a fantastic herbalist warehouse in Sydney, who then helped me blend them and package them, and from there it kind of just grew. So I've got two teas now. So the first one is called Sisterhood, which is basically a really powerful hormone balancing tea, but it's still gentle enough that you can have it every single day, and it tastes good. It doesn't taste like crap like a lot of it. So that was another thing. I was really struggling to like have it because I couldn't palate the taste of it.
Right.
So it's this beautiful herbal teas. All the herbs are sort of ethically sourced, organic. They're caffeine free, all natural. There's no fillers. I'm really passionate about making sure it's really high quality stuff. So we source them from all around the world. And there's things in there like spearmint, which is proven to lower testosterone levels. We've got things like nettle leaf, which is fantastic detoxifying herb, red raspberry leaf, which is great for fertility and PMS and things like that. And then cinnamon bark, which is great for regulating insulin, alfalfa leaf, which is again a great detoxifying fertility herb. So we've got these amazing herbs that are really beautiful, and you just have them in your everyday life. You brew a cup, and like for me, the actual process of brewing a pot of tea is really relaxing. So you get that element from it. It also meant I used to drink coffee. I no longer drink coffee anymore. And it was a process to sort of cut that out. But now I don't even miss it because I'm getting this I'm getting the therapy of having a tea, which is sort of what I needed, was that like having something
hand to mouth.
So that's that one. And that I've got thousands of women across the world now having it and like falling pregnant, and they're sending me through photos of their sisterhood babies, and it's just the coolest thing ever. I never really thought it was going to eventuate to that, and I'm so proud of it, and it's something that I do because I love doing it. It's not my main business. I have another business which is what pays the bills. This is purely because I wanted to bring a product like this to the community because I needed it, so I knew that other women might need it as well. So that's Sisterhood. And then I also have Mamahood, which I created when I had Flynn last year, and found out the women with PCOS often also have issues with breastfeeding because their milk supply is really low, which I had no idea about. No one told me about that. And so again, worked with a naturopath to create this blend of herbs, which not only help to balance your hormones postpartum, but also keep your milk supply going and increase it if it needs to be increased, but also really, again, palatable and really nice to drink and safe for the baby as well, because obviously when you breastfeeding comes through your milk. So so then worked on that one as well, which has been really great. And it's been amazing because I've seen these women sort of having sisterhood, falling pregnant, and then having mamahood on the other side of it. So it's like a really beautiful journey. So I'm really grateful to be doing this and have, created something that's genuinely helping people. But I'm going to offer, I'd love to give a packet of Sisterhood, which is the hormone balancing tea, to anyone who's, watching this.
I'll leave the details below of how they can grab the free sample. But I think that's so fun because, herbs and everything can really support our bodies. And like you've done so much research on like what goes into it, and like just to have a product that's already like ready to go. Like I think it's so fantastic. But then also showing the other side of business that you can do like a coaching business, but then you can also create products to support whatever you notice your community needs. So like you recognized it of like, I really need this. Your people in your community are just like you, so they're going to need it too.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I do think that I think the best businesses grow out of a personal need. And I think that if it's something that you need and you love and you're passionate about, there's probably going to be a lot of other people out there that feel exactly the same way.
Yeah. Well, it's been so much fun chatting with you. I'm just so excited you were able to be part of this summit. So I'm going to leave all the information below of how women can find you online, where they can grab the tea, follow you on Instagram, all the things.
Yay, thank you for having me.
Thank you.